Hello Discovery Ridge Stars. I had so much fun making that other video for you that I wanted to do another video, but I wanted this one to be a little bit different. So I know a lot of people are fans of Bob Ross and his painting show. I have a secret. I actually never saw a single episode of Bob Ross's show until a couple weeks ago when I decided to see what all the fuss was about. And I totally get it. I think that he has a very calming way about him. I think that his painting tutorials are pretty easy to follow, although he does use some pretty high-end supplies. So what I decided to do was make my own Bob Ross inspired painting tutorial. So we're gonna do a Miss Ohms painting tutorial. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you the painting that I created. So I'm actually recording this after I've already done the painting so that I can show you what it's going to look like. So this is the painting I created. So it is a rainbow tree on a black and white kind of moonscape, right? And there's water and there's leaves and it's beautiful rainbow colors. So you can kind of hear it when I'm talking about the painting as I'm creating it. I didn't really have an exact plan in mind for what I wanted this to look like. I kind of just started painting and then figured it out as I went, and I really like the way it turned out. So I made a couple of choices about what to do because this was my first video. So I did not make this only for those people who wanted to follow along. I also wanted it to just be something fun that you could watch even if you don't paint or you don't have paint. But what I wanted to do though is make a very easy to follow tutorial with very limited supplies. So with that being said, I did a black and white background. So if you only have two colors of paint, black and white, you could do this entire painting as long as you have something else to color the leaves with. So my top recommendation, if you have limited supplies, my top recommendation would be to have black and white paint, something to paint on, and then you could use oil pastel for the leaves if you don't have all the colors. You could use, maybe crayon might work, and I've never tried marker, but you could try marker on these leaves. You could also just get really creative and see what works for you. So I wanted to make this kind of something that you could do even if you're working with not very much art supplies.
I ended up talking way too long about what types of supplies I used, so I'm just going to do a quick voiceover. I painted on a 16 by 20 stretched canvas, but you could paint this on paper if you wanted to. I used acrylic paints. I show you some of the brands that I like here, but you could use tempera paint as well. I do not suggest oil paint if anybody happens to have that at home. Acrylic paint is best. Tempera paint would also work for this. If you want to buy paint for this, I would suggest going with something like the ones I'm showing you here. Avoid anything that says that it is washable or says that it is finger or poster paint. Those are all pretty terrible in quality and will be more frustration than they are worth. I have a ton of brushes at my house, but if you only have a few, what you need is probably some sort of larger square-ended brush and some sort of smaller teardrop-shaped brushes. If you only have one of each, that would work just fine too, especially if you're working on a smaller canvas or a smaller piece of paper. You will need some sort of water cup for cleaning your brushes. I use an old souvenir cup like this, but you can use anything as long as it has water in it. I also use an old kitchen towel to dry my brush. You can use this over and over and over until it's so dirty you could just throw it away and get a new one. And for my paint palettes, I use styrofoam plates. If you use a paper plate, you're going to end up mixing the paint into the paper and losing a lot more than you are able to use on a styrofoam plate.
So if you would like, I set up this video so that I'm gonna work through the steps all pretty quickly, but if you're following along, you're supposed to pause whenever needed. So don't think that I'm moving too fast for you. I move fast because I don't want the video to be forever long, but you can pause whenever you need a little extra time on a step. So keep that in mind as you're watching, that you're meant to kind of go back and forth, pausing and working and pausing and working. And the very final thing, and the most important thing, is that this is my painting and it looks like this, but your painting is supposed to look different. If your painting looked exactly like mine, then that really, it would be okay, but it's not really that creative, right? So your painting is supposed to be your interpretation of my painting. So if I tell you to put blue leaves on there, but you don't like blue leaves, don't do blue leaves. Or if you just want to make all of your leaves green or all of them fall colors, or if you want to make a blue sky instead of a black sky, do what makes you happy. And then when you're finished, make sure to send me a picture of your painting so that I can see what you created. So I want to see how many different types of this painting we can create. So what do you think, stars? Are you up to the challenge? Or you can just watch for fun. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get this painting started. If you end up being able to hear it in the background, I am watching my favorite Harry Potter movie, which is Harry Potter 2, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So if you hear anything, that is what that is. So here is my paint palette. I am going to start with just black and white paint. And here's my canvas. I am using a rather large canvas because I thought that would be the best for you guys to see it, but I would definitely recommend doing this on a smaller canvas just for the sake of saving paint and saving time. So I have a rough idea for what I want to do, but I'm just going to kind of go for it and see what happens. So I know I want to do a little pond or a lake over here. I want to do a tree over here, and I want to do a night sky with a moon, like a full moon, creating this kind of illumination effect. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with that night sky, and I'm going to do the moon last because I don't really know where that's going to go yet. So what I'm going to do is, let's start with the circle around where the moon's going to go. So I have my black and white. I'm going to mix up kind of a medium gray. So if you want a medium gray, you do a lot of white and just a little bit of black. Because see, I added just a little bit of black and it's a pretty dark gray. So let's go with that and see what happens. So I want my moon somewhere around this area. So I'm just going to do kind of swirl of a medium gray. Now I'm not going to know if that's right or not till we have the rest of this sky done. But let's start with that. Now I know I want my ground to be about halfway through. But if I end up going over that, that's fine too. So I want my sky to get darker and darker as it goes out. So I'm actually going to add just a little bit more black to my mixture. And I'm going to circle my circle like this. And then I'm going to show you the key to blending. I'm going to take my brush with what's on it. And I'm going to lightly brush on what's already there. And also brush on the new stuff. So I'm kind of blending those two together. A little bit harder to do in a circle, but it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. So I'm going to do that, and I actually want this night sky to be pretty dark because I want to end up being able to do some really nice stars. So if this ends up almost pure black, that would be fine. Alright, so I'm going to circle my circle. I probably don't want to go any lower than this because that's where I want my water to be. So let's make that my stopping point, but again, if I go over that, it's really not a big deal. Alright, this is not getting dark enough. I'm using acrylic paint, so I'm going to add a little water to my brush to get this to blend a little bit better. If you're using tempera, I would avoid adding water. Tempera's already watery enough. Acrylic paint gets just a little bit icky sticky if you don't add enough water. Oops, I kind of went into my circle. Look what I've done. I wanted that to be a nice circle and it kind of changed, but that's right. Swirl it out. Swirl it out. I'm going to be putting a moon on the middle there soon. I don't know what that is. I'm going to be putting the moon on there soon, so I'm not going to worry about the middle of that. Alright. So we're looking okay. We're kind of looking like it's all the same color, but that's right. We'll add a moon on there soon. Alright, so at this point I want to be getting pretty close to pure black. And I'm going to just keep doing these circles going out. Like this. There we go. Okay. Need to do it on this side too. If you're working on a canvas like mine that's stretched over boards, it's completely up to you if you would like to paint the edges of your canvas. I personally tend to ignore them unless I know that it's for someone else. I don't mind blank edges, but if I know that it's for somebody else, I do usually paint those. It does give it a nicer look. So if you're working on a stretched canvas like mine, you can paint those edges. Don't make it a priority though. All right, make sure you're getting all the way down to that line that you had planned. Okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. I'm pretty much doing pure black at this point, which is totally fine. That's kind of what I planned. But one thing I like to do, let me get all the way done here. I don't like it to be just flat, like all the same. And so sometimes what I do is after I'm done making my night sky, it just looks a little meh, right? It just looks a little bit plain. So I'm gonna take my brush and I'm gonna dip in a little bit of white, and I'm gonna do these kind of like moonshine streaks, like the moon is shining off of maybe clouds, or maybe just the atmosphere, or maybe it's just something out of my imagination. Okay, that one ended up a little brighter than I intended, but that's all right. Let's just blend it out. It actually looks kind of cool. Let's have a few more of those. Oh, there we go. Now I don't want to add too much because I still want to do stars, but this gives it a slightly more whimsical look. Now, I don't want to turn it all gray, so the key to these is to lay them down once and maybe run over it 2 or 3 times. The more you run over it, the more it's just going to blend, blur away into a gray. We're not trying to turn it gray, we're trying to add little white streaks. Doesn't that look much better? Maybe right here. So did you see that? I lay it down and then I run it over once, maybe twice if it's still a little too bright. I'll show you that one more time. Lay it down once, run over it once. It's a little bright down here, run over it twice. That's it. The more you run over it, the more it's going to blend into one big color that you're probably not going to end up being happy with. All right, so let's see. Let me take a look at that. All right, let's brighten up the middle because I'm going to have a moon there. So this actually needs to be quite a bit brighter. I'm going to put a moon on there once it's dry. I can't do that until it's all the way dry. So one thing I want you to notice too is that throughout this entire process, I have never washed my brush. Not one time, because everything I'm doing is some sort of gray, and so you can do that with a dirty brush, especially if you're going to a pure black. You don't have to wash your brush. It's going to turn pure black whether you want it to or not. So once you start needing to get into your bright whites, maybe a brush cleaning could do you some good, but actually if you can see, I'm getting the effect I want here by just kind of slowly building up some white. So I lay it down in the middle and then I swirl until I get what I want. So here's another trick. This is good. It looks really good. That's the color I want, but there's some ridges of paint. This is probably gonna mess everything up, but there are some ridges of paint that are just too, they're gonna take forever to dry. So not only that, but they add a little texture to the painting that I didn't really want. I'm gonna take my finger, lay it as flat as I can get it, and just swirl those ridges away. And so it's probably pretty hard to tell a difference from where you are, but from where I'm at, I got rid of that entire problem. All right, so before I do anything down here, let's go ahead and put our stars on up here. So we're going to use speckle painting, not splatter painting. Splatter painting is a very messy process. Speckle painting is slightly more organized, slightly neater. So basically what I'm gonna do, I grabbed another brush. You could do this with the same brush, but I grabbed a different brush. And the brush that I grabbed is very stiff. It's not a brush I would really ever use for painting because it's so stiff, but stiff bristles like this, like a toothbrush, is gonna give you the best effect. If you have an old toothbrush, you could use that for this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip it in the water and I'm going to take it to my plate and I'm gonna make a little puddle of very wet white paint, very wet. Here's how wet it needs to be. When I lift my brush, it should not be dripping, but it should be almost dripping. This is nowhere close to dripping, so I actually need more water. Maybe one more scoop, maybe 2. Mix it up. Okay, we're looking a little bit close to drippies there. I don't know, I need a little more. Okay, so again, when you lift up your brush, it should not be dripping, but it should look like it's going to, if that helps. Okay, so if you have a toothbrush, you're gonna just rub the toothbrush in there. So what I'm gonna do is take my brush, and again, it looks like it's gonna drip, but it's not dripping. Put my plate down. This is a two-handed process. I'm gonna hold my brush with my left hand because I am right-handed. Hold my brush with my left hand, and I go about maybe 3 or 4 inches away from the canvas. So I have about that much space between the brush and the canvas. This hand never really moves except to just move the placement of the brush. This is what does all the work. Okay, so here's what I do. Pull back on the bristles and let it spring forward. I'm going to show you that up close, what I just did. See that? All right, so you take your fingers and pull back on the bristles, let them spring forward. You will get paint absolutely everywhere. You will not even expect the places this paint is going to go. You'll notice that I have my wall covered with a sheet. It's actually a shower curtain, because I want to be able to do this without worrying about my walls and my floors. I can see the paint coming back at me. I'm fine with that, but if you are in a space where it's really important not to get paint everywhere, either skip this step or maybe take it outside to do this step. That would work too. If you're using a I like a lot of stars, that's why I'm doing this a whole bunch. Did you notice that I only dipped it one time? If you are doing this with a toothbrush, then you're gonna hold it, let's see, I don't really have a brush that looks like a toothbrush. Let's pretend like this is a toothbrush. You're gonna pull back on the bristles like this. Okay, wash your finger. So, I'm gonna move you closer because it is a little hard to see how many stars I put on there, but I put a whole bunch of stars on there. Maybe too much, you know, but that's okay. We're gonna be putting some other stuff on top of this, so it won't end up being too much. Something else you'll notice is in there is brush hairs, which is not a good thing. It means you're using slightly less than perfect brushes. If you notice that, try to get them off as soon as possible. But sometimes if you wait for it to dry, they'll do a little less damage to your painting. All right, I probably should have shown which brush I was using for the entire background, but I am using this, it's like a 1-inch across square-ended brush. All right, so while my sky is drying, I still need to do that moon. We'll get there. While my sky is drying, let's work on this down here. So again, I know that I want to do some sort of body of water, and then I want to do some sort of land area that has a tree on it. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to go back to that square-ended brush that I used for the sky. I'm going to do pretty much the entire background with that brush. So I'm going to take that brush. I gave it a quick rinse. It's not perfectly clean, but it doesn't have to be. And let's do the ground. Let's do pure black, and let's do establish a horizon line, which is where the sky meets whatever's happening down here, so the ground. So I'm going to establish a horizon line just by taking black paint on that square-ended brush and just drawing a line. This will mix a little bit with what's happening above it, but that's fine. That's why a black and white painting is so forgiving. For sure. Okay, so there's my horizon line. It's a little hard to see, but it's there. I just drew a black line where I wanted to cut off my sky. So there it is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this land wherever I want it over here. So I haven't decided yet if I want this attached or not. Let's see what happens. Oh, I got a little drippy white paint over here. All right, so let's see what happens. What if I did a shape like this? Okay, so let me just envision that this is all lake, and this is the ground back there, and this is my little, where my tree's gonna be. Let me envision that. Let me get this painted in and envision that. Let me see. Okay, so this would be the lake. Do we like that? Yeah, you know what? I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually paint my body of water first, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna make this just a little bit bigger. I don't want it connecting to this back here. This will be a separate little area, but this looks okay to me. So yeah, I want this to be bigger. So let's do our lake, and then we'll come back and we'll fix this. So for the lake, I'm thinking that should be maybe the brightest gray of anything happening down here, and then it's going to be reflecting the moon a little bit too. So for the brightest gray, let's just go back to our old pile of gray, mix in a whole bunch of white, and let's just see what this looks like. I don't like to overmix my gray, so do you see how many different types of gray I'm getting in this? I actually prefer that, especially when I'm doing a body of water. I want my water to look really streaky, stripy. Water is usually never one flat color, so usually if I'm mixing up a color for water, even if it's blues and greens, I will dip my brush in one, dip my brush in the other, swirl them together once or twice, and then I'll just go for it on the canvas. Again, the more you run over it, the more it's going to blend into all the same color, which to me, I don't want. But if you like that, you can do that. All right, so I'm going to get up to my horizon line that I did earlier, a couple minutes ago. I do want to give that a little bit more character later, but let's just lay down this body of water first. I'm going to add a little water to my brush, add it to my paint, fill in some of these holes. I'm actually really liking how this is turning out. It almost has like a silver effect, which is very cool. All right, so the only reason I'm not getting up to my land is because I already decided that I wanted that to be a little bigger. So I'm just gonna leave a little space between. It wouldn't matter if I messed it up though. Let's mess it up a little bit. You can see it doesn't matter if I mess it up a little bit. Okay, so here is my little lake. Let's see. Maybe what I want to do is oh, well, that line turned out a little more wobbly than I intended. Let's do that. I'll come back and fix that when I redo my land back there. So I wanted to have a little more character. So let's add a little bit of black to the brush. I'm going to turn my brush this way, not this way where you make wide lines, but this way to make skinny lines. So I'm going to put a little bit of super dark streaks in there, like this. Okay, I'm not getting dark anymore. So again, lay it down once, turn your brush and run it over. Lay it down once, turn your brush and run it over. It's blending away. Oh, yeah. There we go. I don't know if you can hear the TV, but Ron just got a howler at Hogwarts. Ooh, okay. I don't know. Did I like that better before, or do I like it better now? I don't know. I guess it's too late. The good thing about painting, especially doing a painting like this where you're just kind of layering things on top of each other, is that you can just kind of keep playing and see what you like. And one thing I used to do a lot is, and I still do it if I'm working on a really difficult painting, is I take a picture of each step of the process. So every time, like when I got done with my sky, I would have stopped and taken a picture. And that way when you're feeling just a little bit discouraged, like you do something and you're like, I ruined it, you can look at those pictures and you can see actually how far you've come. And I don't know, that just really helps me out. Okay, let's add a little more darkness over here because suddenly I'm looking at it and I really like the way it looks with like the white under the moon, and it should be a little bit darker over here. So let's put a little more black on the brush and just blur that in. Now I'm also remembering that I'm gonna have a really dark tree over here, so I don't wanna go too dark, otherwise we're gonna kind of lose that effect of the tree against the water. So let's make it darker, but not like crazy dark. Not like black. The ground's gonna be black. We wanna be able to tell the difference. All right, what do we think? Oh yeah, okay. Let's add a little more darkness here. Okay, and then do we want to make this a little brighter? Let's do this. Let's try to add, we can guess that our moon's going to be right there. So I'm going to do just a little bit bright, bright, bright. Bright, bright, bright. It's not really turning out very bright, is it? Right beneath it. That could be because it's so wet still. Maybe we'll try to brighten that just a little bit when it is dry. I don't know, some of those are not really working out for me. Did I ruin it? Not really liking all those finger marks now. So I gave my brush a quick rinse. Just a quick rinse. It was really building up with kind of a lot of paint. So let's do, I'm using very soft motions here. I don't want to disturb. I kind of have a lot of paint on here. So at this point I'm trying to lay things down and be soft with them. Very soft touch with the brush. Very soft. Blend, blend, blend. Bring it over here a little bit. Oh, and if you'll notice too, I'm keeping my lines perfectly horizontal because that shows a calmer body of water. If you go diagonal, you have a storm and you have like some underwater sea creature in your painting. You got to keep these lines perfectly horizontal, 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 horizontal. No matter what you're doing, keep them perfectly horizontal if you want a calm body of water. Sometimes you don't want calm, and that's okay, but if you want it to be a calm, peaceful body of water, you got to keep them horizontal. All right, I think that's as bright as we're gonna get it for now. It actually looks really nice. So let's go back to our ground over here and make that a little bit bigger. I gave my brush a quick rinse just now only because I want this to be pretty much pure black. So if I have any white in the brush, it's going to turn it kind of grayish. It really would not have been a big deal. And it was not 100% necessary that I do that, but I did it out of habit. All right, so let's do this kind of, I'm trying to imagine where my tree's going to be, and I'm thinking it'll be like right here. So let's do something like that. So I just do this kind of triangle shape and keep the top of it like kind of wavy. The more tilted your line is, the more of a mountain this is going to look like, or like a cliff. So the more you can stretch this out like longer like this, the more it's going to look like a nice little sloping hill. If it's too diagonal, it's going to look like your tree's falling off a cliff, which sometimes happens. I kind of like that. Let's see. I didn't intend for it to reach up here into the corner, but it kind of did, which is fine. The end of it got a little fuzzy too. I can go back and fix that later once it's all dry. Okay, so that looks good. Now, the reason why I need this horizon line up here at the top is because if I don't have any line between the water and the sky, then this is going to look like the ocean, which would be fine if I was doing a palm tree, but I'm not planning to do a palm tree, so I don't need this to be like an ocean scene. If this was an ocean scene, this would be really nice actually. But since I want this to be more like just a tree that we would find in our backyard, I need this to look more like a lake. So let's see if I can beef up that horizon line a little bit. So again, I'm going to turn my brush kind of the sharp way. Go across, come back, go across. I try to do everything in as long brush strokes as I can get it. And I try not to do a bunch of choppy lines. I don't like to do lines like that. I think that it actually turns out a lot better if you do long lines. Let's give it a little bit of character and give it some, it's not mountains. I'm not trying to do mountains, but I want it to look like something. Usually I'll give it character on the top and kind of leave the bottom be straightish. If these were mountains, then they would probably be reflecting in the water, but this is a lake, and so I don't want to make these look like more than they are, so I'm actually just going to leave them kind of like that. I'm noticing that there's a huge glare right here. This is not what this actually looks like. Let me see if I can turn my lights down a little bit and get this a little more accurate. So I'm thinking that's about as accurate as we can get it with the glare and the lighting, but this is kind of what it looks like. I'll try to hold it like this every now and then so that you can see that that nice shiny glare does not actually exist on the painting. It's the curse of my lights. So this is what it looks like so far, and the reason why I like to jump from sky to water to ground is because now I can go back up here and do my moon, because that is completely dry, and then we'll go back down here and start working on more of that stuff. So for my moon, I am actually going to grab the same brush I've been using. I'm gonna take white paint, and with a brush this large, I don't want a huge moon, I want it to be kind of small actually, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my brush in the center of this circle and turn it, turn it, turn it, and now the problem that most people run into is that they keep making this bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because they think that their circle needs to be absolutely perfect when it doesn't. So get it as close to perfect as you can get it and then leave it. Now what I'm seeing is that my my paint was not 100% dry, so I'm actually starting to pick up some of that gray paint. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get it as nice of a circle as I can get it, and then I'm gonna leave this, and then I'll repaint it once it's dried again. So it is turning pretty much completely gray on me. All right, let's let it be at that. It's not perfect, but I'm gonna be repainting it anyway. See what I mean about keep going back and keep trying to fix it? Okay, so here's what it is. It looks really white because of the glare, but it's actually pretty gray. Sometimes I will leave it gray and then use the white later to make it look like it's got craters and stuff. Maybe I'll do that, we'll see. Just realized I forgot to zoom in again when my camera turned off, so let's zoom in. Okay. All right, so there is my moon. So I don't think my water's dry enough yet to put those streaks in there. So I think for now, what we're gonna do is we're actually just gonna let this dry a little bit.